As you all mentioned, we want to be the partner of choice, and our ASEAN partners are waiting for us to show up. And we need to provide a clear and consistent economic framework for the Indo-Pacific region. But unfortunately, U.S. has struggled to regain momentum in economic engagement following its withdrawal from TPP. So Ms. Weisel, what elements of the TPP and IPAF prove effective and ineffective? And how can future agreements demonstrate strong commitment to Southeast Asia's development goals while safeguarding our U.S. interests?
Thank you for the question. I think in terms of TPP, TPP is now in force. The U.S. is not a party to that agreement, so it was a successful agreement, notwithstanding the fact that we are no longer party. I think that what was successful about TPP was, first, that it was a very high standard agreement and include a lot of issues that had not been part of previous trade agreements, that advanced rules that were of importance to U.S. economic competitiveness, including on things like intellectual property, on state-owned enterprises and competition, and other areas. In looking back at what we would want to do were we to pursue a free trade agreement with the region, I think there are definitely additional areas, updates that you would want to consider, and things that we learned, for instance, over the last couple years about resilience of supply chains, about our competition with China, that you would want to add to an agreement like that were not issues then. But as in all free trade agreements, there are new generations of agreements, new issues that you need to think about and incorporate in updated agreements. IPEF, I think, was, in my view, more of a political agreement than an economic agreement, and that the purpose of that was to demonstrate to our trading partners that we were going to be engaged in the region. Yeah. We wanted them to commit to a range of issues related to areas of mutual concern, including related to supply chains. But we were not prepared to discuss market access in any way, and I think that really hobbled the effort. I also think that our decision not to engage on digital trade was problematic and something that we would want to revisit going forward.
Thank you. As we strengthen our strategic posture in the Indo-Pacific, particularly with ASEAN partners like the Philippines, Subic Bay, which I visited, is again emerging as a critical location for U.S. logistics and operational planning. And our defense cooperation agreement with Philippines grants us access to sites like Subic, but we must balance our military presence with Philippines' constitutional limits on foreign bases and sensitivities to nationalist sentiment, which has historically complicated our security cooperation. Mr. Poling, keeping this delicate balance in mind, what specific capabilities or pre-positioned assets would most enhance deterrence at Subic?
Thank you, Chairwoman. The most important thing for the Philippines, well, I suppose there's two. One, it needs asymmetric capabilities, much like Taiwan or anybody else facing a giant neighbor. This is not a foot race the Philippines can possibly win. So seeing more deployments like the Nemesis right now, Tomahawks, paired with Philippines' own mid-range land-based capabilities, like the BrahMos missiles they bought from India, is key. It allows the Philippines to hold Chinese vessels in the South China Sea at risk, in a situation in which there's no number of hulls that they could possibly be sold or loaned that would make up for the asymmetry they face. The second is presence. At the end of the day, there's no military solution to the South China Sea. The Philippines needs to be able to show the flag, and they've done a remarkably good job with a very limited Coast Guard and Navy. We need to see more uncrewed platforms. We need to see more cheap vessels. Mm-hmm. We need to see more support for Philippine basing in the islands. And that doesn't mean U.S. boots on the ground, but the U.S. could be providing more funding for the Philippines to build up its own facilities, as China and Vietnam do as well.
Thank you. One of the most pressing challenges in the region is China's dominant grip on critical mineral supply chains, especially for materials vital to clean energy and defense technologies. And we mentioned Indonesia is the world's top producer of nickel, This is critical for battery technologies. So, but it's alarming that Chinese companies control 75% of Indonesia's nickel refining capacity. Ms. Weisel, what are the implications of China's chokehold on critical mineral supply chains for the U.S. and allied nations?
Well, I think we're seeing the results of that chokehold in our industries today, where China can limit access to critical minerals, and then it also controls these critical minerals from other countries. So I think all of this is quite disturbing and just reinforces the need for the U.S. to establish its own supply chains with the region. I think, as I mentioned in my testimony, Japan has had quite a good deal of success in trying to limit its reliance on Chinese critical minerals by promoting its relationships with the region. They have an organization called the Japanese Organization for Metals and Energy Security that has the purpose of ensuring stable supplies of critical minerals and energy for Japan.
Thank you.
The result of that, and is something I think we should be looking at, is that they have been able to successfully diversify their sources of critical minerals, and in the funding that they use for this organization that's known as JOCMEC,
Yeah.
they have.
Sorry, my time's up, so let me yield my time to Ranking Member Bera for his questioning.
Great, thank you.